West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
We learned just a short time ago that Donald Trump now set to deliver remarks at his golf club in New Jersey Tuesday following the arraignment in Miami. He originally was scheduled to host a private fundraiser closed to the press. Meanwhile, legal experts are continuing to weigh in on the 49-page indictment charging the former president with serious and repeated violations of national security laws. NBC's Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian has more on this.
What some are calling a devastating criminal case against the nation's 45th president. Even lawyers who once supported former President Trump say the evidence is overwhelming.
The evidence in this indictment is very damning for the former president.
Republican Jay Town was appointed in 2017 by Mr. Trump to be Alabama's top federal prosecutor.
If the president was directing people to lie, directing people or himself moving information around that is the object of the grand jury subpoena and DOJ's investigation, well, that's obstruction of justice. That is a conspiracy to commit false statements, and that's against the law.
Law professor Ryan Goodman, a Trump critic, has studied Espionage Act cases.
This is one of the most incredibly strong indictments that I've seen compared to all other indictments under the Espionage Act for retention of military secrets in, let's say, the past 20 plus years.
Experts say the most compelling evidence may be two recordings. One by a lawyer hired to help Mr. Trump comply with a Justice Department subpoena. Quoting Mr. Trump as telling the lawyer, "Wouldn't it be better if we tell them we just don't have anything here?" And a second featuring Mr. Trump himself, acknowledging he possesses secret information about U.S. military plans.
How powerful is a tape recording of Donald Trump saying in his own words that he has a classified document?
It's extraordinary. It would be so compelling to jurors.
Town believes the Justice Department should not have charged Trump with retaining classified documents because he says it raises an uncomfortable comparison to President Biden, who is under investigation over secret material found in his home and office. Multiple sources tell NBC News that investigation is nowhere near a completion. But he says even if convicted,
these obstruction counts, which again are very compelling in the indictment, and if true, the president is going to have a hard time getting around those 6 counts.
Though prison time is unlikely, he says.
I don't think that President Trump will serve a day in prison. He is entitled to Secret Service protection for the rest of his life. The Secret Service cannot delegate that to the Bureau of Prisons.
Thank you to Ken Delanian for that. I want to bring in now Robert Ray, who served on the former president's legal team during his first impeachment in 2020. Robert, thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you.
Good to see you. So we both read through this whole thing, right? It reads like a novel. really, in the way in which the prosecution has kind of laid out this case, right? The way that Jack Smith has laid out this case.
It's referred to as a speaking indictment.
What was your reaction to this indictment and what you read?
Well, the reaction I have to the clips that you just played from others is that it's not very nice for them to say that this is an overwhelming case based upon a reading of the indictment, except for the fact that overwhelming cases are not, they don't jump off the page from an indictment. They have to be proven in court. So I take indictments for what they are. In fact, every federal judge who instructs a jury at the end of a case says the indictment is a charge only. It's evidence of nothing. So I appreciate the commentary and everyone sort of jumping on the bandwagon and the hooray Henrys, but you can't tell whether a case is overwhelming until the rubber meets the road and a trial actually happens.
Okay, but let's go through the evidence, though, that they have. It seems like recordings that they have, the notes that they have from Evan Corcoran.
Well, the recording aspect of that is a little misleading because it's suggesting that it's a recording of Donald Trump. It's not a recording of Donald Trump, as I understand it. It's a recording of the lawyer who made mental impressions and notes as a result of his conversations with.
It's twofold. There was audio recording, and then there was the recording of the audio, the note taking of Evan Corcoran as well.
Right.
Per Donald Trump's actions within their conversation. At one point, Evan Corcoran knows that Donald Trump makes this kind of plucking impression with his hand to say, hey, listen, if you're going to put them in the safe, maybe pluck one out.
Okay, well, that's not the same thing as having Donald Trump recorded. I understand there are other things that Donald Trump has made statements, and I'm sure that the government will try to introduce those against him at trial as admissions. But I guess the piece was a little misleading to suggest that they were Donald Trump's words. They're Donald Trump's words as recorded by a lawyer who speaks into a tape recorder to preserve what it is Donald Trump supposedly said.
What about Donald Trump's words to the biographer and saying, I have this classified document that I could have classified when I was president, but I can't anymore, and it pertains to a possible invasion on Iran? That was a recording of the former president.
Right, and that will be evidence that will be introduced against him at trial.
Is that damning evidence, you think?
Well, my overall sense of this is that this is a very serious case. There's no way of cutting it any other way. They are serious felony charges. The rubber will meet the road when the case goes on trial.
Yeah.
There is jury appeal in a case like this if there was harm to the United States as a result of the former president's conduct. I haven't seen allegations yet that would suggest that there was harm to the United States. And the government, to be clear, doesn't have to prove harm to the United States in order to prevail on these charges. I'm just suggesting to you that it's altogether another situation. If, as the result of this alleged conduct, harm came to the United States, that's a serious matter.
What about this, though? And this is obviously alleged in this 49-page indictment. The documents contained defense and weapons capabilities of both the U.S. and foreign countries, United States nuclear programs, potential vulnerabilities of the United States and its allies to military attack, and plans for possible retaliation in response to a foreign attack. The unauthorized disclosure of these classified documents could put at risk the national security of the United States, foreign relations, the safety of the U.S. military and human resources, and the continued viability of sensitive intelligence collection methods. I know, sir, you know how important those human sources are to CIA agents who put their lives on the line every single day.
And my question is,
for the protection of this country,
was there unauthorized disclosure or wasn't there? And we won't know that until trial. They haven't alleged that there was unauthorized disclosure. They have simply said that if it were disclosed, that would be the kind of damage that would come to the United States. That's something that we're going to have to look for when and if the case goes to trial.
How damning is it that allegedly the former president lied to his own attorney as well, Evan Corcoran, on the day in which he was supposed to obtain more classified documents, June 2nd? He instructed Walt Nauta to move boxes out of that area and then told Evan Corcoran to go get the classified documents.
If there is proof that the conduct was willful in a game of musical chairs in order to avoid compliance with a subpoena, which is essentially the gravamen of the obstruction charge, obviously, and I have said this publicly, that's trouble and that's concerning. But there's also some, predicate questions that have to go on here about what was the president's right to retain these documents. Everybody understands it's classified information, and at the highest level, some of that classified information was top secret. In other words, the highest classification that there is. The question, though, is, Was the president authorized to retain these documents? I think there's a substantial question that will be litigated pre-trial about constitutional issues about the president and the former president's prerogative, whether the Presidential Records Act is constitutional. All those things are going to be addressed, I imagine, in a series of pre-trial motions that will start after the arraignment, and they will probably extend well into next year, 2024. I do not anticipate that this case will actually go to trial during an election year, and I think it would be seriously bad for a country that is divided for an attempt to be made to try to force this case to trial before the election.
Bill Barr, the former president's attorney general, said if even half of this thing is true, he's toast.
Well, that's nice for him to say, but that's why we have trials. And I don't think that's an appropriate role for anybody to say about what this actually means. It's an indictment. It's an accusation. It calls for a process to begin. The criminal justice process is going to be tested in this case, and the country is going to be under a test, and the rule of law is going to be under a test. And it's important that we as a country, all of us, whatever our views are committed to trying to get this right. That will not be easy to do in an election year, and that's what I look forward to. All of the histrionics, I think, need to be put to one side so that we can calmly and safely get the country through this in the best interest of the country toward an appropriate conclusion where the rule of law has been respected. And I respect juries and outcomes. And I think it's way premature to be talking about whether this is an overwhelming case based upon an indictment.
When you took over the investigation of President Bill Clinton from Ken Starr, you pushed for an indictment and you said no one is above the law, even the President of the United States.
And that's true.
That?
That's right. It is still true. But of course, the law applies to everyone in the United States, but everyone in the United States is not a president of the United States. And the rules and the way in which a case unfolds is different. Presidents are different. There are only two constitutional officers in our system that are subject to election by all the people, and that's the president and the vice president of the United States. That's it. I'm not suggesting that a president or a vice president is above the law, far from it, but the operation of the rule of law when it applies to a president is different, and people need to recognize that. That's all I'm saying.
It is Monday, the 12th of June of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious the little Yorkie is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, River City Hash Mondays, because that's what we do on Mondays. Okay. Well, how are you? We had another quite eventful weekend, did we not? Boy, bridges collapsing, indictments, the reaction to the indictments, the call to destroy the government because, well, when all else fails, you want the government destroyed, I guess. And here they were blaming the hippies for doing everything that they are doing right now. If we let the hippies rule, look, they're gonna take down our country, our way of life. Yeah, well, your way of life is absolute criminal, violent behavior, and we don't like it. Or is it violent criminal behavior? There you go. It's in the morning. I haven't had my minimum daily requirement of you-know-what. That's right. So, boy, Lindsey Graham was going off. Always makes me wonder what the Russians have on him. Yeah, boy, did you see that, though? He was livid. And how dare anybody, do this to Donald Trump? Had no problem when they were doing it to Hillary Clinton. And I know that there's this argument about the law that always hinges upon intent. It wasn't the intent of Hillary Clinton to hide anything from anybody. In fact, she offered it all up. You got Nancy Mace out there saying that Hillary Clinton took a hammer to her server to destroy the emails. No, that's not what happened at all. An aide sort of remembered destroying two phones long before the investigation by the FBI by
security protocols that the government gave them in a handbook, done in the same way that Colin Powell, now remember, Colin Powell had a server at his place. Everybody did. It was only when Hillary had one that they decided, you know what? We got a letter of the law here, and she's not following the letter of the law. And it's immaterial if people before her didn't follow the letter of the law. She's doing it now. And yet they don't have the introspection to stop blaming Hillary for stuff that's being done by Donald Trump right now. And I think that Robert Ray at the top pretty much set it down in stone what their argument is. The law applies to everyone, but Donald Trump isn't everyone. He's the special one. Is Donald Trump above the law? Well, of course he is. Why do you even have to ask? And by Dana, the fact that you have to ask obviously shows that you are very disloyal to Donald Trump and you have no business judging him. I love that. The only person that can judge Donald Trump are the people he bought off. Funny how that works, huh? Oh, you don't think that Judge Cannon was not bought off? She was bought off. She was placed in her spot for exactly this type of predicament. Now, I know that Jack Smith ticked off the box to put it down in that jurisdiction. And it wasn't 15 judges either. Let's be clear about that. It wasn't 15 judges where she was chosen from random. It was 4. And I think even that was down to 3 when it was all said and done. Random. So I don't know. It could be mucked up. She could do a lot of mucking up. Delay. I mean, already, how many years are we out from the election and Trump is out there saying, I'm running for office. You can't come after me. Give me a break. We all know that if you're going to commit a crime, all you have to do now is run for president. Give me a break. Of course, we all suspected. I think it was more than suspicion. We all stated back when this whole thing began, the only reason he was running for office was because he was trying to keep from being charged for crimes committed. Get out of jail free card, at least while he was president. And then we hear, after that, I'm not giving up office under any circumstances, because as soon as I do, I get treated like everyone. But according to Robert Ray, it doesn't even matter now, because once you were president, you are not everyone anymore. You are a special one. Except for everybody else who is not Donald Trump. Everybody else is everyone. Joe Biden? Oh, yeah. So I want to know, they keep saying that Joe Biden has some top secret material at his house that they found. Yeah, and he gave it up, didn't he? And how was it found? It was found by them, meaning Joe Biden and his staff. They found it. They're the ones that turned it in. Donald Trump was teaching his crew. They were rehearsing on how to move boxes around to keep the FBI and his own lawyers from knowing where they were. So I know that in law, a lot of stuff hinges on intent. But that doesn't matter to MAGA. Jesus. Facts don't matter. Nope. Trump is being treated so much differently than everybody else. That's damn right. This guy gets away with everything. Pay off like a piddly fine quarters. I'm just paying a couple of quarters in my scheme of value for a fine. $20 million, no problem. Vlad will like double that for me, quadruple it. And he did. And now it turns out that the nuclear secrets, a lot of this other purloined material, might have been going to the Saudis for money. When he got Lindsey Graham about ready for his head to pop off. You see those eyes? He was drinking. All puffy. But he was about ready to pop. Especially when he started defending Trump, saying he never gave any of this material, never sold it to anybody, never let anybody see it. It was not given to a hostile foreign power that could be used against us. Once Lindsey started saying that, I realized, you know what? That's exactly what Trump did. He sold nuclear secrets to MBS, and they bought him off saying, with a golf tournament, a golf league, the USFL of golf. It's so facile. The guy wants to build a business for his golf courses, and he's willing to sell out state secrets to do it. And we're supposed to let him get off because it's only business? It's not personal. It's business. He just wants to be able to make some money at his golf courses. He didn't mean to destroy the world by giving some murderous thugs nuclear secrets so that they can foment whatever against the Israelis or whoever. Give me a break. This is the guy, while in office, said, oh, yeah, come on in. You want to arrest U.S. citizens because they said something against your government? And, because they have, blood ties or, they're legal immigrants and become U.S. citizens. Take them away. They're not real Americans. Pay me some money. Do what you want. We already had to experience that, let alone the separation of little kids from their families at the border. Okay. I don't want any of that anymore. They're willing to go into the streets and kill people again to keep him from what? Being like everyone, I guess. Donald Trump's not everyone. I saw it on TV. Great. And somehow, this is the argument I've been getting here by some town folk on the community page, that by dint of the fact that I went to grad school at SF State in my late 30s, somehow I got indoctrinated there. I think my indoctrination would have occurred long before that, and I'm not the one that watched or listened to Rush Limbaugh like these idiots did, and then moved on into Fox and all of that. Talk about brainwashing. We're at a point now where people can say Hillary Clinton destroyed her illegal server with a hammer to keep the FBI from seeing the emails. And that's not what happened at all. All right. Did Pence offer up that he had secret material at his place too? Because I don't hear much about Pence. It's about Joe having this stuff. But did Pence offer it up before it was asked for? Just curious. Because even there, he said, sure, take it. I didn't mean that, but it was there. Didn't know. Okay. Trump could have followed that tack too, but no. He didn't want to give it up because he made a deal. Oh, did you see the copy machine? There was like a high volume copy machine in one of the rooms where there's stacks of boxes almost up to the ceiling. 2 or 3 deep. Come on in. There's a copy machine right there, foreign spy. And I'll just sum up with this. Chinese spies were actually, literally, arrested on the grounds of Mar-a-Lago. Okay? Nobody was arrested in Hillary's basement server room from any government, because it was the same setup as Colin Powell and everybody else before her. But Chinese spies were actually arrested. Okay? And there's a high-volume copy machine with boxes of secret material right there. How much do you have to pay for that ride? I wonder. All right, what do we have in store for you here? For the curated part of this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, as we begin in the Bistro Cafe. On the rest of the menu here, the SEC lawsuits against cryptocurrency companies have raised serious questions about the industry's future. Brittany Griner and her Phoenix Mercury teammates were confronted by a hate-spewing provocateur, that's what they call it, at a Dallas airport over the weekend, and a hulking smokestack brought down in a controlled implosion at a defunct Detroit trash incinerator ends decades of toxic stink. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where ex-Scottish leader Nicola Sturgeon was released after her arrest by police in a party finance probe. Notice there were no riots in the streets there. I wonder why. And the United States will rejoin UNESCO after a 5-year absence that began while Trump was president. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and thank you, Kelly, for doing so. Across the page to the left from that chat room link that is near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could possibly send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, if you could send those funds our way once a month, thus becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it helps us pay our bills and the other costs that are incurred from running this powerhouse of resistance. So thank you to those of you who have been so generous over these many years in helping us pay our bills and those other costs as well, and thereby fulfilling our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you can do so by going to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that and those. And thank you, Tom, for doing so. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable @JusticePutnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes 10 minutes before showtime, but you can always get access to those show notes and links diaries by going to my social media feed, because the link is right there. So there. Follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. All right. I see as I opened up this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, it looks like Berlusconi has died at age 86. All right. Well, it happens. It does. Anyway, this first offering in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Fatima Hussein and Ken Sweet. First came the crypto winter, then the alleged fraud wrought by FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried, and now the lawsuits. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission filed lawsuits last week against the world's biggest cryptocurrency exchanges, Binance and Coinbase, deepening tensions between the government and a volatile industry that has been marred by scandals and market meltdowns. Binance and Coinbase are both alleged to have violated the law by operating as security exchanges without registering their businesses with the SEC. Binance faces additional charges along with its CEO of diverting customer funds to a separate business, among other accusations. Most recently, the SEC asked a federal judge to freeze the assets of Binance's U.S. platform. The lawsuits are the latest in an ongoing tussle between government officials who describe the crypto industry as the Wild West. I call it a Ponzi scheme, but that's just me. And creators of digital assets who seek to legitimize cryptocurrency as a currency of the future, taking all of our water to cool down their servers. Industry leaders say that with their latest actions, U.S. regulators are more clearly signaling that they seek to ensure cryptocurrency has no room in the traditional financial system. And leading regulators are more open about their thoughts on the merits of cryptocurrency. SEC Chair Gary Gensler told Bloomberg on Tuesday, "We don't need more digital currency. We already have digital currency. It's called the U.S. dollar." What results from the legal battle could greatly diminish the growth of the crypto industry, or alternatively, restrict the scope of the SEC's regulatory authority. The crypto industry already knew it was under a tough spotlight from Washington's regulators and politicians. The collapse of crypto prices last year, as well as the demise of several notable crypto companies, including FTX, exposed investors to billions of dollars in losses. Gensler has repeatedly stated, both to Congress and in public appearances, that he believes the SEC has more than enough authority to regulate the industry. Staff bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Brittany Griner and her Phoenix Mercury teammates were confronted by a provocateur at a Dallas airport on Saturday. The WNBA said in a statement it was looking into the team's run-in with a quote, social media figure, end quote, whose actions were inappropriate and unfortunate. The safety of Brittany Griner and all WNBA players is our top priority, the league said, without specifying what exactly happened. Before the season started, the league had discussed with Griner's representatives and the Mercury security concerns when the All-Star Center traveled for road games after she returned from detainment in Russia. The thought was that the highly publicized case compromised her and others' safety. The league granted Griner permission to book her own charter flights. The WNBA added charter flights for the playoffs this season, but only a handful of back-to-back regular season games were scheduled for such flights. WNBA teams have flown commercially during the regular season since the league's inception in 1997. The league typically does not allow teams to charter because it could create a competitive advantage for those teams who can afford to pay for them. Prior to the season, the WNBA worked together with the Phoenix Mercury and Brittany Griner's team to ensure her safety during her travel, which included charter flights for WNBA games and assigned security personnel with her at all times, the league statement reads. We remain steadfastly committed to the highest standards of security for players. Mercury player Brianna Turner said in a tweet people at the airport followed the team with cameras saying wild remarks. Excessive harassment, Turner tweeted. Our team nervously huddled in a corner unsure how to move about. We demand better. A Twitter user posted a video that appears to show a part of the confrontation where the individual asked questions of Griner about why she hates America. And then under further inspection, the individual involved is a provocateur, shall we call him again, from Blaze TV. Glenn Beck's old place is now out there running interference for Vlad and others. Why does Brittany Griner hate America? The Bring Our Families Home campaign, an advocacy group that works to bring home Americans who are held hostage or detained in foreign countries, issued a statement condemning the incident. Accosting a recently returned hostage like this is unacceptable, and we urge social media companies to prohibit the monetization of any resulting content. Our campaign stands with Brittany, her teammates, and the Phoenix Mercury, the organization said. Corey Williams of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In a boom, a low rumble, and a vibrating crash, the looming smokestack of a shuttered trash incinerator whose stench sickened and angered Detroit residents for decades came down in a controlled implosion yesterday morning. Reducing the smokestack to rubble is almost the final phase in the facility's year-long demolition, which should be completed by July, according to the city. The facility has stood a few miles northeast of downtown Detroit before closing in 2021. Fumes and the rank odor of burning trash could be smelled for miles, but were strongest for residents of nearby streets, raising concerns about pollution and the impact on residents' health. The 330-foot tall incinerator, operated by Detroit Renewable Energy, opened in 1989. Up to 5,000 tons of trash were burned there per day. The presence of this incinerator has been a real pain point for this community. because it was another example of a health hazard being placed in a lower-income community of color, Mayor Mike Duggan said last year. We worked hard behind the scenes to get the incinerator shut down, and now residents of this neighborhood will finally be able to say goodbye to it forever. Detroit household trash is now trucked to landfills outside the city limits. Well, where they will probably build upon in some time in the future, and then the properties that are built upon them will sink, because that's what happens when you build on a landfill. Okay, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from our break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, That Said. I hate multiverse stories. Sure, you get the paths not taken and free will versus fate and the there's no place like homes, but very quickly you fall into eroding the integrity of your characters among their many alternate versions, and also into dulling my emotional connection to your protagonist. Why should I care about this Spider-Man saving this world when there are a million gajillion others? Even worse in multiverse stories is when the narrative takes a backseat to the meta-narrative, and all your protagonist's crucial emotional beats weaken into iterated tropes. And I see these traps in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I also see how it is postmodern hip-hop storytelling with its narrative sampling, its remixing of storylines, and its self-referencing, which becomes kind of annoying for me, but is probably just right for a younger, more modern-centered audience. That said, Across the Spider-Verse mostly dodges these traps and has the most amazing animation I've seen in a long time. There's so much energy and vibrancy and life and creativity and intelligence and heart in what these people have put out, it's overwhelming. Directors Joaquim Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson, along with production designer Patrick O'Keefe and art directors Dean Gordon and Aries Khalid, have outdone their predecessors. Okay, 3 of them worked on Into the Spider-Verse, but only 1 in the same job. They have so embraced the freedom of animation to be a straight IV drip from their imaginations, and it's so powerful to see them mix color schemes and textures and styles all to serve character realization and story development. I watched trailers for Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, and the latest Trolls movie before Across the Spider-Verse, and they looked like pieces of bubblegum sitting before a full-course meal. I still don't like multiverse stories. That said, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is a hell of a multiverse story. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Pools, water parks, and other recreational water venues are popular places to relax and stay cool, but they can be sources of serious illness. Since 2000, nearly 500 outbreaks have been reported at recreational water venues in the U.S., resulting in over 27,000 illnesses and 8 deaths. Most were caused by parasites, bacteria, viruses, or certain chemicals in the water. Parents with young children who have diarrhea should not allow their children to swim or play in the water. In addition, bathers should check the inspection scores of pools and water parks and can conduct mini inspections using test strips before getting in the water. A few simple precautions can allow you to share the fun, not the germs. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work. Sorry, I'm late. Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi. Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Why would your local newspaper not even mention an important local news story? Perhaps because it's a damning story about the conglomerate owner of the paper. This month, hundreds of journalists working for major dailies in some 24 cities across America joined in an extraordinary mass walkout from their jobs. They were protesting the rank greed, gross mismanagement, and abandonment of democratic duty by the owner of their papers. That owner is Gannett, a massive financial conglomerate that has grabbed control of more than 200 dailies in 43 states. This is a huge, multidimensional news story about news itself. But where was the coverage? Big story number 1. Unbeknownst to most people in these communities, they no longer have a local daily paper. Control over everything from news content to price now belongs to bean-counting strangers at Gannett headquarters hundreds of miles away. Big story number 2. More fundamentally, control has moved from journalists to bankers. Gannett is owned by SoftBank, a Japanese hedge fund that has rapaciously looted American newsrooms to grab extravagant fees, salaries, and profits for its rich financial hucksters. Big story number 3. The workaday hometown reporters, photographers, and others who actually produced Gannett's papers are making a gutsy stand against the profiteer, not just for themselves, but for the essential ideals of journalistic integrity and grassroots democracy. Biggest story of all. Gannett's 200 papers cravenly joined in a concerted blanket cover-up of this story, stiffing the public they're supposed to serve and disrespecting the ethical stand of their own employees. Even Gannett's flagship paper, USA Today, which regularly reports on other labor actions, took a dive on covering the journalistic malfeasance of its own overseer. This is Jim Hightower saying, to fight hedge fund corporatization of journalism, go to newsguild.org. Howdy-ho, folks, and thanks for tuning in to my Hightower radio commentaries. And guess what? There's even more Hightower waiting for you online. Subscribers to my Substack newsletter, Jim Hightower's Lowdown, get commentaries, articles, interviews with progressive sparklies, live events, historical nuggets, and more. Go to jimhightower.substack.com to sign up, and you'll get more. That's jimhightower.substack.com.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1904. That was the day that 18,000 workers in Chicago's stockyards went out on strike. Work in the stockyards was often brutal and dangerous. Thousands of workers toiled in the yards, many of them immigrants from Eastern Europe. They worked butchering and processing the hogs and cattle raised in the American West into meat for distribution by rail to consumers across the country. The industry gave Chicago the nickname Hog Butcher for the World. In 1904, the Amalgamated Meat Cutters Union organized a strike. The main demand was increased wages. The meatpacking companies were able to get scabs to cross the picket lines and act as strikebreakers. Most were African Americans and European immigrants. Many of these workers had not been organized by the union, which was dominated by the skilled German and Irish packing house workers. Novelist Upton Sinclair visited the stockyards during the strike to research conditions faced by the workers. In his famous novel, The Jungle, Sinclair gave a fictionalized account that captured the devastating impact of the scabs on the strike. He wrote, quote, "Such were the stockyards during the strike, while the unions watched in sullen despair, and the country clamored like a greedy child for its food, and the packers went grimly on their way. Each day they added new workers, and could be more stern with the old ones, could put them on piecework, and dismiss them if they did not keep pace." It was not until the 1930s, when the stockyard unions took seriously the task of organizing across race, ethnic, and skill lines, that they finally won a contract and gained the rights of union recognition.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 62 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs about the same as what we had yesterday, upper 80s, low 90s. Plentiful sunshine with winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows around 59 or 60, and we'll have winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then, except for a few afternoon clouds, mainly sunny tomorrow with highs in the upper 80s, winds out of the northwest picking up to 10 to 15 miles per hour. Grass pollen is rated very high in the little town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 19 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is very high at level 9, so you know to take care. Barometric pressure is now falling at 29.97 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 75%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 81 degrees and fair. Paris is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Rome is 83 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 58 and cloudy. Kabul is 71 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 85 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 70 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 42 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and cloudy with a small craft advisory on the bay because of fog. And New York is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Jill Wallace of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Former Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, who dominated politics in Scotland for almost a decade, was arrested and questioned for several hours yesterday, Sunday, by police investigating the finances of the governing pro-independence Scottish National Party. Police Scotland said a 52-year-old woman was detained Sunday morning as a suspect in connection with an ongoing investigation into the funding and finances of the Scottish National Party. She was released without charge pending further investigation, police said, about 6 hours later. British police did not identify suspects until they are charged. Sturgeon said after her release that her arrest had been both a shock and deeply distressing. The SNP said the party had been cooperating fully with the investigation and will continue to do so. However, it is not appropriate, they said, to publicly address any issue while that investigation is still ongoing. Two former SNP officials, Colin Beattie, who was treasurer, and Peter Murrell, who was chief executive, were previously arrested and questioned as part of the investigation. Like Sturgeon, both were released pending further inquiries. Murrell is Sturgeon's husband, and police searched the couple's home in Glasgow after his arrest in April. It is highly unusual for a leader or former leader of a UK political party to be arrested. The last such case also concerned the Scottish nationalists. Sturgeon's predecessor as First Minister, Alex Salmond, was arrested in 2019 and charged with a series of sexual offenses, including attempted rape. He was acquitted on all 13 charges after a trial in January of 2020. Before that, in 1979, the former Liberal Party leader Jeremy Thorpe went on trial, accused of conspiracy and incitement to murder. The man he was charged with trying to kill claimed they had a sexual relationship at a time when homosexuality was illegal. Thorpe denied his claim and was acquitted. Sturgeon unexpectedly resigned in February after 8 years as Scottish National Party leader and First Minister of Scotland's semi-autonomous government. She said that she knew in my head and in my heart that it was the right time for her, her party, and her country to make way for someone else.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Matthew Lee of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Biden administration said the U.S. will rejoin the UN's Educational and Scientific Organization after a 5-year absence that began while Donald Trump was president. The State Department said it had delivered a letter seeking readmission to the Paris-based body known as UNESCO late last week. The June 8 letter from Deputy Secretary of State for Management Richard Verma proposed a plan for the U.S. to rejoin the organization, the department said. Any such action would require concurrence by UNESCO's current membership, and it is our understanding that UNESCO leadership will convey our proposal to the membership in the coming days, the department said in a statement. Details of the proposal were not immediately clear. The U.S. owes a significant amount of money to the organization for arrears and due payments, but earlier this year, the administration set aside $150 million in its current budget plan to pay for a return to UNESCO. The U.S. and UNESCO have had a turbulent relationship over the past 4 decades, after sparring mainly over ideological issues during the Cold War and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict more recently. The Biden administration said when it took office that it intended to rejoin UNESCO, and in March, when the budget for the next fiscal year was presented, Undersecretary of State for Management John Bass said the administration believed that rejoining UNESCO would help the U.S. in its global rivalry with China, which has invested large sums into UN organizations. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Terry Tunchowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. T'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, jardin, dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.